Welcome to a Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn, and today I have with me my friend Bob Rockwell out of Dallas, Texas. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Bob, you and I've known each other a few years now, and for the audience sake, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your background? You were an electrical engineer and went to work for a Fortune 500 company right out of college, but kind of give us a 2 or 3 minute how you got from there to here.
Yeah, it was interesting. If you ask me to be, so I am no longer, I would not be considered an electrical engineer anymore. I couldn't engineer anything anymore. So it was interesting after going through that education when I got hired by the Foxborough company, and I became they put me on a leadership track. And maybe they didn't trust my engineering abilities or what have you, but they did put me on a leadership track. And I became known as a turnaround guy. And I rose through that company very quickly from pretty well the bottom of it to being the leading candidate to be its next president 16 years later. And I had moved numerous times. I ran Middle East operations for them because obviously I would blend in. and ran some of the European operations. Anyway, when I left them, I had a global job. And as I said, I was really supposed to lead it next. And we got purchased by a British private equity firm. And that kind of put the end to the opportunity to become the president of that company because they instilled their own president and their own CFO. So at that point, I knew that I was not going to be president of the company. And so it was interesting because it was coincidental with me making pretty major faux pas in my personal life, in that I had learned to make an incredible living, but not how to make a life. And in essence, my wife was raising my sons without me. I was never home. And I was just gone around the world constantly. And that hit me pretty hard one day, actually, when I was in Singapore, 2 days after my oldest son became a teenager, and I missed it. And that was a huge, huge life-changing moment for me. And I called George, my boss, and said, I'm going to be resigning, which worked out great since we had just been purchased by the PE firm anyway. And so it was interesting. I'd only been home maybe a few days, and I get a call from a guy from Texas. I was living in Massachusetts at the time at our corporate headquarters, and get a call from a guy, Pete, who worked for Ross Perot at EDS. And he said, hey, I hear y'all is leaving Foxborough. How would you like to talk about maybe living in Texas? And he convinced me and my family to make one more move, one final move, and then that was in 95. We moved down here to Texas from Massachusetts, and I helped them do big deals with big oil companies. And then after a couple of years, they got a new CEO. And they were about 110,000 people around the world, and they searched the world. They had a pretty comprehensive database, and they looked for people with pretty strong business backgrounds who had some abilities to potentially be executive coaches. And they picked 16 people from around the world, and they really educated, trained. I mean, they spared no expense sending us off to London Business School and Thunderbird and Disney Imagineers. It was incredible, heady times with the idea that we're going to reskill the top 10,000 people in the company. And then they selected 2 people at the end of that, myself and another person, who I ultimately hired away from that company. They selected us to be the executive coaches for the senior team. And I did that until I realized that I probably didn't share the same values as the CEO, and I'll just leave it at that so I don't end up in jail. And I decided to leave, and I'd become known, actually in Foxborough, I left this out, I'd become known as a turnaround guy. They would keep giving me different parts of the corporation around the world that were busted, and I knew how to fix them, and I could get stuff done. And I learned how to turn around companies, and then subsequent to that, I learned how to take good companies and make them really good. And so that started me then on a quest to say, when I left EDS, I thought, I need to now take all that I've learned, and I would love to create the next generation of great executives. And so with the business partner, I hired away the other executive coach from EDS, and we formed our company called Advisor. In fact, we'll be 20 years old this coming February, and we decided to do a few things really, really well. So about half of the business, half of what I do is I coach executives, and I do that pretty uniquely. I actually do it at risk. So they only pay me if they get over orders of magnitude, great impact every month. And then the other thing we do, we've created a couple of programs, one around helping people build executive level relationships. And that's a program that's been pretty unique and successful. And we've offered that in 45 countries around the world. So that's most of what we do. So roughly half of what I do is executive coaching, development, and stuff related to that. And the other half of what we do is this program called Developing Executive Relationships. And we've just had a blast for 20 years, Joel. It's just been pure fun. And so now I've been just helping create great executives for quite a while. And it's euphoric. And I get to do it kind of at my pace whenever I want to, for as many people as I want to. And so it's a whole lot of fun.
You mentioned you had, just before the show, you mentioned you had a handful of other folks, 7 or 8, I think you said, former executives on your team as well?
Yes, and while I do them on a contract basis, my business partner, Kelly Thurman, and I, we own the company. So it's a 50-50 partnership, if you will. We're an LLC. But we have 7 other former presidents or CEOs that are incredible executives that they help us mostly as we deliver the Developing Executive Relationships program. They don't do our coaching and stuff for us. Pretty well everything we touch, either Kelly or I are involved in it. But the Developing Executive Relationships program requires 2 executives. And often it's either me or Kelly with one of those other contract executives. That's what we use them for. So we just get to do things really, really well.
One of the things I appreciate about you, I've known you for several years now, and I've had a glimpse of what you just shared, but certainly not to the magnitude of the success that you've been blessed with in your lifetime. And so I appreciate your humility around that. What would you say as you're coaching people, when they come to you, is there kind of 2 or 3 areas they usually come looking for help in, general buckets, or is it kind of all over the map?
It's truly the box of chocolates, Joel. But here's one of the things I've noticed. There's always this pattern. About 90% of the time, if you looked out after we've been coaching for 6, 8, 10 months, we're often working on things that bear no resemblance to what they originally contracted before. So to answer the question kind of directly, so that's all over the place. So I have one guy who had just come he owns a corporation, and he had just come off of a cancer thing and has to re-engage in his company and re-engage in his family and so on and so on. And so there's an awful lot of stuff we're doing on the personal side for that guy. Another guy is about in the process of actually acquiring another company. And he needs some help with that. Another one and you may run into this an awful lot given what you do in C12. I've got a couple people that have owned their companies for 25, 30 years. And their gold team, their most senior, most respected people are aging out. And they recognize, oh my gosh, we've not really created the bench behind them. What are we going to do to keep this brain matter? How do we do this when all these people are retiring? So I've got a number of people in that situation. I got another one he says, I need to make sure that I do a better job of bringing my son, in this case, my son, up to speed, because there's no way right now he could run this company. And Bob, I don't know how to do that. Could you help me? And then there's others that just say, I want to create a great company. Bob, I want the most fantastic grade A executive team on the planet. And I want to do that purposefully. How do I do it? And it's all over the map. And I love the fact that it's the box of chocolates. It's not formulaic.
What characteristics would you say that you've seen in some of the worst leaders that you've either worked for or been around?
Well, it's interesting. I should say never. There's one leader in particular I can remember that I would say is a bad leader. Usually it's interesting. It's not bad leaders that need coaches or even want coaches. It's usually really, really good leaders who want to be the best on the planet. It's really kind of interesting. And I think that raises the bar. There was a time when I had a senior executive of a company, pretty big company, and he actually said, Bob, I heard you could help me with one of my people. The person's a brain on a stick. They're really, really key to my company, but nobody in the company likes them or respects them. And I thought, well, this should be interesting. And that became an individual, but quite frankly, he didn't want to be coached. He walked in like this, and first thing I asked him, I said, so why are you talking to me? And he says, because I have to. So, and I thought this could be interesting. And he actually didn't want to be coached. He thought the rest of the company was wrong, and people just didn't understand him. And I said, I don't know that I can help you. because he didn't want to be helped. And so I kind of said, no, I don't think I really want to be your coach, because he didn't. It was just too much of an uphill battle, and I said, life's too short. But he generally was a bad leader. Nobody wanted to work for him, and I'm surprised. The only reason I think the company kept him is because he had so much knowledge. And I told the CEO, "You're actually doing a disservice to yourself and the company by keeping him." I said, he doesn't share your values, and people can't work for him. He's in the wrong job, or in the wrong company, or both. So anyway, yeah. So I don't usually run into bad ones, Joel. I usually get good ones, and they will be really good, and that's fun.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hadn't thought about that before, but probably the people that want to be coached are probably the better leaders, because they want to sharpen their skills.
They are. But now, sometimes your job as a coach, my job is to disturb people. If you think of it, everybody, you and I are the same way. Everybody that you and I work with are talented, experienced, successful leaders. They already are. They're not going to do one thing differently unless they're either excited enough to or disturbed enough to. So my job as a coach is to excite you and or disturb you, but to never leave you neutral, right? That's my job. And so for a person who comes to me who has issues, I'm pretty good at disturbing them. I'm saying, you have people that don't want to work for you. You're not enjoying your job. Is that the life you want to have for the rest of your years, or would you like to do something about it? If you do, I can help you. If you don't, I can't help you. Which would you like to do? And so my job at that point is to disturb them. So it's interesting. It's just I love the box of chocolates.
So I've got to ask, what's your favorite way to disturb people?
It's first off, it's always going to be a question. Well, I say that sometimes I show them something that they never saw before. But my best way to disturb them is to simply say, "Is this really what you want?" The age-old, foolishness question. If you continue the way you are, do you expect to get better? So I'm very, very direct with them. Your boss told me I had to talk to you. Why? What's going on? And there's I won't get into it now, but I actually have what I call the coaching you thing, which actually I help them. We have to come to a common understanding what the problem is. I ask them how that impacts them and the people around them. And I ask them, what are the consequences if we do nothing? And what else? And what else? And what else? So I don't have to disturb them. They generally disturb themselves at that point. And usually they'll either say, like in the case of that one guy, in 20 years, one guy, he kind of left angry because he thought everybody else was wrong and he was right. And I thought, okay, have a great life.
Yeah.
Kind of love you. Bye-bye. But anyway.
As you've gone into companies, you get involved in some turnaround opportunities, quite a few over the decades. What kinds of things did you see needed to be repaired, or was there any secret sauce in there that you often saw?
There was two secret sauces. I'm going to share this with you. I won't give you the details, but you'll kind of see the two secret sauces. The first one is that pretty well every significant issue in a corporation is a people issue. Well, we don't do this well. Well, guess what? That's a leadership issue. Well, we made this mistake and we didn't do this. And when we tried to correct it, we can't seem to get our act together. That's a leadership issue. So almost all issues are people or leadership issues. And the fun thing about that is they can all be fixed. Sometimes they have to be fixed by changing out the people, but they can all be fixed. And so I see incredible possibilities with pretty well anything when it comes to do with people. All turnarounds have been first. So it's people, first off. Let me just say that. First is people. Second thing is most people don't have a process to do good. So I have a process that I've actually created for turning around an opportunity. And there's an acronym for it, but I call it RELEASE. And the RELEASE has the specific steps that I take to transform a company from either not doing well to good or from good to really good. And I have created that process for myself, having done it a number of times. So it's either they have no process for success or they refuse to use a process. Here's when you'll get a hint of that, Joel. When someone comes to you and says, we really don't do too many things rigorously. We're more entrepreneurial. And I say, no, you're not. You're lazy and you're undisciplined. I'll say you're lazy and you're undisciplined. Otherwise, you wouldn't be calling me saying this isn't working. And so there's the disturbed thing.
That's quite disturbing.
Yeah, so I get that stuff a lot. It's really, see, my job is that I'm never mean to anyone. First off,
Hmm.
if I'm your coach, one of the things that happens as soon as someone says, "Hey Bob, I'm thinking of you as my coach," I'm going to tell you right now, my job is to share with you truth. My job is to be your greatest champion on the planet. My job is I will be faithful and loyal to you for as long as you want me to help you and you actually apply and do some of the things that I suggest to help you. I will never be anything other than for your radically best, both professionally and personally. That's my promise to you. And they see that right off the bat. As a result of that, since I will care about them that deeply and I'll be their greatest cheerleader, I actually gives me the freedom to speak incredible truths to them without them being offended because they know I move heaven and earth to help them. Once you're my coachee, I will bring everything I have to bear for you personally and professionally to be your best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's without limits. And so that allows me to speak a lot of truths to people, including sometimes me saying, I don't know how I help you with this, but I know somebody who can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun.
So let's say a leader's listening to this podcast. They feel like there's more. They don't necessarily think they can afford a coach. They're not quite ready, or they want to try something else themselves.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What might be a couple of places they look?
If they want to, well, first off, it's not go read more leadership books because the first 15 that they read probably would have solved it if it was simply a matter of knowledge. It is seldom a matter of knowledge. The benefit of a coach should not be to put more knowledge in your head. The whole idea of a coaching relationship, it should be transformational. If you haven't transformed your belief set about yourself and others, then the coach has probably failed you. If you haven't transformed your abilities to lead your teams, then your coach probably has not been a whole lot of value to you. If you've not transformed who you are as a person in your personal life to help you be your personal best, then the coach probably has not been a lot of value to you. So if you're going to try it on yourself, then just try it. It's usually just a matter of will. What a coach does, a coach should do three things. First off, they should help you be accountable to yourself. The coach doesn't do the work, you do the work. They should help you be accountable because most people know what they have to do. They just either don't have the discipline for it or what have you. The second thing the coach should do is they should help you become your personal best. And it's transformational. Do they have the skills and the abilities to help you be a better version of yourself? And they're going to do that by asking a lot of questions, giving you some insights and what have you. And then the third thing I think a coach should do, especially if you're a leadership coach, which is what I am, is darn it, I better become one of the best leaders of the planet. And so that's what a coach really helps you do. And to the extent you can do a lot of that on your own, great. But a coach generally provides you a whole lot more insights and a whole lot more discipline and a whole lot more access to different resources that you may not have had yourself. And especially, for someone like me who's been doing this for 2 decades, you should be able to get that from your coach. So I would suggest if a person does it on their own, take a look at, first off, what are your strengths? What are the things you're really, really good at? And strengthen those. And don't worry about going back and trying to fix all the stupid little things. You're not going to be perfect. Strengthen the things that are strength. And then the second thing I'd ask people to do is do an honest inventory of 2 things. What do you absolutely know and believe to be true about yourself? And what do you absolutely know and believe to be true about others? Because I'm telling you, as a leader, you will always act from those 2 anchor points. And it's interesting, you can see what leaders know and to be true about themselves by how they behave. And you know what they know to be true about others by how they behave. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting how they do that. And Joel, I see it's getting darker outside, so I'm going to turn up my light a bit.
Okay.
There. So anyway, I mean, there's so much more I could kind of give you. Just briefly, I will tell you this. Whenever I first start to coach someone, I'm coaching them on 2 paths that they're aware of, because I tell them this. One is I coach them in the areas that they most want to address, whatever it is, assuming I'm able to. And then the second thing I do, it's almost surreptitious, but I also put them on a path to become one of the greater leaders on the planet. So I'm doing the two things at the same time. So I'll inject some things as part of our coaching approach that does those two things. And for as long as they engage me, because they can end it at any time, for as long as they engage me, then they're going to get both those things, both what they want to be coached to, as well as what I'm going to do to help them become one of the greater leaders on the planet. And I have actually a specific phased approach to make that happen. It's really kind of fun. They just don't even know it's happening.
Is there one of those you could share?
Yeah, so now I'm going to give away some of my trade secrets. I call this, and so this now go back to this person who you said, okay, they don't want to coach, but they want to try this on their own. There's a 3-phased approach that I do, and it actually came as a result of a question that a CEO asked me one time about, Bob, I'm having a hard time getting people engaged in the transformation of my business. And this came from that and changed my whole approach to coaching. So this came from that. But here's what it is. Essentially, everything in an organization revolves around leadership. Don't try to differentiate a company unless you have a 100% grade A leadership team behind you. Don't try to operate a company on purpose, predictable, repeatable company, unless you've got a 100% grade A leadership. Foundation of all it is leadership. And when I say 100% grade A, I can define grade A later, but a 100% grade A leadership team, too many leaders, even at executive levels, tolerate mediocrity. It's amazing. I actually had a company that you would know. In fact, it's a very, very well-known corporation. And the CEO, I sat down with the CEO, and he said, he said to me, Bob, I'm having a challenge, he said, with as we made a move. They moved their headquarters from Ohio down to Texas. And this was years ago. And he says, I'm having a challenge with it. And I said, so tell me about your senior team, your direct reports. He had 9 direct reports. In essence, 7 of them were really good. 2 of them were questionable. And I said, what? Why are the 2 questionable ones here? And he gives me all the excuses. And I said, well, tell me, how much time do you spend? Look at the 9 people. Where do you spend most of your time? Of course, it's those 2, right? I said, if you look at the energy and the challenges and the focus, where's it all? It's on those 2. I said, so therefore, you're probably not paying a whole lot of attention to the other 7, right? I said, so now tell me, is it okay to have 2 that is sucking all of your time and your resources and so on? No. It was interesting. So leadership is everything. And here's what I do. So here's my 3 phases. This is what I call the leadership expedition, Joel, that I put people through that can take years. But I also have an offering that I call the leadership expedition. It's fairly new. So the first one is leadership. And it's the 3 phases of leadership: leader of self, leader of others, and leader of leaders. And think of it. Each time, well, I use the term the baby has to change, right? So think of it. If you're a salesperson and you've been a phenomenal salesperson, and you've been a phenomenal salesperson forever, it has nothing to do with tenure that all of a sudden you become a sales manager. The baby has to change. It has to go from, it's not the deals or the sales anymore. I would love to develop and lead a team of incredible salespeople and help them be the best in the world. Your baby has changed. Similar again, when all of a sudden you become a leader of leaders. Hey, I would love to be the vice president of sales and marketing, and have the marketing team and the sales team and the business development team. Well, guess what? Your baby has to change again, because it's no longer about the sales team now. It's about this team of senior leaders. It could be directors and vice presidents who work for you. Now you need a completely different skill set yet again. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the baby has to change. So it's all leadership and being purposeful about leadership. Now when you get a pretty consistent, predictable, repeatable leadership team that's going towards the same vision, now what you do is you start to work purposefully. Do we actually work according to plans? Do we have processes and procedures that are do we have non-negotiables here? Or do we have a culture of optionalism? Which, by the way, 90% plus companies have a culture of optionalism.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. So once I get to now work on purpose, wow, this is pretty good. We've got predictable, somewhat repeatable results. This is really cool. Guess what the next logical step is? Now, differentiate the business. Raise the bar. Create yourself to be the standard bearer in these particular elements. And to do it in any other order than that becomes frustration. A lot of people with bruises on their foreheads from beating them against the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that difficult. It just takes a discipline that a lot of people don't have. And so I help executives kind of through that process too. It's really kind of fun.
And you use the word discipline.
Yeah.
Is every successful executive you've met disciplined?
Yes. Now, you said a couple of words. You said a key word there. Successful. You got to define what that means. Have there been people that have made great companies that are successful from the standpoint of money and maybe have been somewhat renegades? Yes. And that's because probably you created something so fantastic that you didn't even have to be a great leader. People just jumped on board. You attracted talent simply because you had the best widget or the best process. That's not really sustainable. And that's why an awful lot of companies go through these stages of where, oops. And you and I both know that there are, if you will, to use the term celebrated is probably not the right word, but there are jerk CEOs out there that nobody really wants to work for, except that they're very rich, they're very powerful, and they have a really new cool stuff, and I want to be part of the team, but I can't stand the individual. So I think, and those people often, though, they either can be disciplined or not disciplined. I've not found many compelling executives that are successful repeatedly that people want to work for that don't have discipline. It just can't. You stop and think of it. Every day you don't get to wake up and say, here's what I'm going to do today. Your time has to be determined. You have to say, I'm going to be doing this. So if you're not working to a plan that supports and helps you achieve the vision you have for the organization, where are you going? You're just doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have no idea. And you can tell that when you read some of the management discussion reports at the end of every 10K, every 10Q, you can tell by the junk that's in there that they have no idea why they did as well as they did. And they have no idea where they're going because they can't tell you the plan to get there. So I think they have to be disciplined.
Bob, how do you define success?
Yeah. Well, there's different terminologies. First, let's kind of get some. Let's use I'm going to give you 4 terminology. First off, achievement happens when I accomplish something for myself by myself. Are we good with that? I achieve something. Second, success happens when I'm able to work with others to achieve something pretty fantastic for myself and others. That's success. Third, though, I think significance happens when I actually enable people to do pretty incredible things for others and with others. And then I think ultimately I create a legacy when I put an entire organization in position to do these fantastic things for others without me. Mm-hmm. So success to me is, am I able to engage others to accomplish something pretty cool that I'm proud of? And maybe they are too, but I think there's levels beyond that. So success, that to me would be success. You've done some things successfully with others, and they actually love being a part of it. Mm-hmm. To me, that would be success for me. And I think there's huge difference between people that raise their kids for success versus people who raise their kids for greatness. This goes into a whole new thing there. In fact, part of my challenges for some of the executives that I work with is that they've done a great job of raising their kids for success. And they've got some pretty messed up kids. And so I'm helping some of them say, let's learn how to raise your kids for greatness instead of success. And that's different. Night and day different. Mm-hmm. Let me give you an example. When you think of success, Joel, what do you think of?
Most people think of money or status or...
Money, fame, power, special ability. Think of athletes and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So now keep those things in mind. And now look at the difference when you raise your kids for success. You want them to have, power and money and fame and these special abilities, athletes, whatever they are, actors, it doesn't matter. When you raise your kids for greatness, instead of just money, I actually want to raise my kids to be generous. Mm-hmm. Instead of raising my kids to have power over other people, I actually want to raise my kids to be servants. And instead of raising my kids to say that it's all about fame, I hope my kids are raised to be humble. And instead of focused on just their special abilities, I would love my kids to be grateful for whatever they have and for however the good Lord has made them. I think that gives you better human beings. Now, it's interesting. You and I probably personally know, I know we do, you and I both know people who, by that definition, are great people who also happen to be successful. But when I ask people to think about famous, successful people who are also great, they have to ponder a long time. Sometimes they'll say, oh, well, that was Mother Teresa or Gandhi or whatever. It's interesting. But if I ask them the question, think of people who are really, really famous out there, very successful, that you would say are great from that definition, and they have to ponder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a
Yeah.
long-winded answer to what's the difference between, what success is.
Do you see, you've coached people now for a lot of years. Do you see any good things coming up in the next generation that is a
Uh,
positive sign?
I'm concerned for the next generation from a couple perspectives. One is the degradation of society. I think we're raising the next generation to not be sure who they are or to be victims or what have you, and that hurts my heart. I get less angry than I get disappointed and hurt because my heart hurts for them. So I think that's one of the challenges with the next generation. I think the second challenge that the next generation has to overcome and face is this incredible ubiquitous technology that allows them to almost have, see, do, and experience anything at the flick of a switch. And that concerns me. However, here's the plus side. I think for those individuals who say, I want to be different and I want to change the world, this climate allows them to stand out like a shining star. And I think that's a good thing. So I think opportunities for people who say, you know something, I want to be great. I want to make an impact on this world. Boy, the world is your oyster, unlike any other time, I think, in history, just because the world's so desperate for them. So I don't get a chance to coach a whole lot of junior people outside of the church environment. And I think I would like to because the world really needs them. But boy, oh boy, is there opportunity for them. I just don't think, maybe I'm too pessimistic, Joel. I think this world tends to have a smaller percentage of the young people that are really saying, I'm willing to work hard, I'm willing to make sacrifices, and I'm willing to engage others and see value in them to help change this planet. And I don't know that there's as many of those as I would like to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of desire there to make a difference. Perhaps the work ethic is the one that your generation and my generation is the most concerned about.
Yeah.
Because we were, if we had to, we'd work 100-hour weeks. You mentioned you moved 8 times in 16 years to 3 different countries, as you were climbing the corporate ladder. And,
Yeah.
uh, and some of the younger generations like, enough already. I am not doing that.
Well, and I
And
wonder,
my hat's off to them in some
yeah.
regard.
Well, and I wonder if their parents are, your parents, I was raised by, my dad was kind of he was a really, still, my dad's been passed now for 4 or 5 years. He is still the wisest person I have ever known. My dad was brilliant, but he raised, and I'll confess this, he raised us for success and not for greatness. And he said, son, the world is your oyster. There is absolutely nothing you cannot have and nothing you cannot be if you are willing to work hard, work smart, and make sacrifices. And he drilled that into us just to tell us, it's your choice. But boy, oh boy, there's nothing. And so, I took that pretty seriously and did it. Nowadays, those are not necessarily terms that people want to hear. What? Work hard, make sacrifices? No, I'm a victim, right? But I think for those who, as I said, those few who, or a smaller percentage, who really do say, darn it, there's opportunity here for me. Yes, there's opportunity, and I will be your biggest encourager to say the world needs you. Please.
You mentioned a couple of times that you're the biggest cheerleader, the people you coach.
Yeah.
Do you find that leaders actually enjoy having somebody be their cheerleader? Are they kind of starving for the affirmations, or?
Yeah, I think so, Joel. Here's why, especially the senior folks that I deal with. There's an expression that says that the first casualty of war is truth. It's also the first casualty of becoming an executive. If you stop and think of it, most people tell you as an executive what they think you want to hear or
Hmm.
what they want you to hear. It's very rare that you actually get pure, unadulterated, unfiltered truth, unless you've created the environment and that people trust you enough that they'll do that. So I think for any executive to say, you know something, I've got Bob here, and no matter what, I can contact him anytime, and I know he's not going to sugarcoat it, and he's going to tell me when I'm doing something wrong, and he's going to tell me when some of my thinking is stupid. He's going to tell me that, and I know because he wants my personal and professional best for me, and I don't question it at all. I think people do want that. Quite frankly, I think that's one of the things they should expect to have from a coach.
Hmm.
If I can't be radically for you, by the way, it's also the same way a CEO picks a president. It's those two things. Are you radically for me and my agenda? And can you garner the respect of the rest of the people that I work with? And I think if you can do that, then you've got the right relationship. I think so. Absolutely, yeah. I think a president or CEO says, Bob has the respect of the rest of my team because I share with them what he shares with me. But Bob is radically for my agenda and no other of his own. And I think that's huge value for him.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Hmm. Bob, one of the things I like to touch on in these episodes is, tell me a little bit about your spiritual journey, or where are you today? Some of the people on my podcast are various stages of their journey. Not particularly wanting to get super spiritual here, but
Yeah.
kind
Um, yeah. My journey, again, just like my working career, my spiritual journey is a freak show. Um, I was an anti-Christian. I felt that religion or anything like that was for weak, stupid people. I remember I was raised by an intellectual dad who was also not a Christian. And I was not saved until I was 39 years old. I told you that I moved from Massachusetts to Texas. In hindsight, I will tell you it was not to work for EBS. It was so that God would save me.
of.
So there was an incredible there was 3 miraculous events that happened right after I moved to Texas and started going to a church, which I'd never gone to really before. That changed my life. But so we moved to a really, really nice high-end neighborhood here in North Texas called Willow Bend. We move into this great big house. And the first question they ask you when you move to Texas, you know this because you're a Texan. The first question they ask you is, what church are you going to? Right? And so we move into this neighborhood, and they said, we don't go to church. They said, what? Well, you need to try our church right around the corner here. Da 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 da. And Carrie, my wife, said, Bob, we've got two boys, two teenage boys at the time. Probably wouldn't hurt them to be around. At least should have some positive influence. And I said, honey, you go. If it doesn't suck too bad, maybe someday I'll join you. It's kind of how it worked. And anyway, so she went. She goes to church. She comes back. She says, Bob, you'd really like this. She said, first off, they have a rock band and not a choir. She says, secondly, they have padded, comfortable chairs and not pews. And she says, the pastor has fairly long hair and he rides a motorcycle, and you ride a motorcycle. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it won't be so bad. So that's kind of what started the journey, and we started attending that church. And the story of how I got saved is pretty miraculous. But through that, in a very short period of time, God saved me. And within 2 months of attending that church, I gave my life to Christ.
Hmm.
After being, the first 39 years of my life I was an anti-Christian. Like, no, that's for weak, stupid people, right? And then from then, my life has just been, I've been on fire. God's just been done incredible miracles after miracles, one right after the other. And it's just been this euphoric high ever since. And so where we are right now, my bride and I, with our family, we're doing phenomenal. We just keep thinking, pinch us, that we're where we are in life. And we lead a pretty blessed life. We lead what's called an abiding life. So we've done that pretty faithfully. We have really recognized that on our own, we were not that good. But day by day, kind of trying to hear from God and doing what He says, life's pretty phenomenal, and we're at a pretty blessed point in our life right now. So
Good.
I can give you more
Good.
detail. We're sitting pretty good. It's been fun.
How do you find people react to you being a Christian in the business realm?
Well, it's interesting because I don't approach my coaching, first off, saying right off the bat. They find out at different stages. They all find out, by the way. Half the people I coach are not Christians. And so it's only later they may ask me, where did you get this? And I says, would you really like me to tell you? You give me permission to tell you? Yeah. And I said, this is going to sound strange to you, but God gave it to me. What? And that sometimes opens the door. So the people who are not people of faith, I just coach them as they just see me as this guy who's pretty wise and experienced, who cares about them and pours into them. The difference is when I coach a person who's a believer, oh my gosh, we've got infinitely more tools, abilities, and power at our fingertips. And so we can do some incredible things. I can do some really good things with non-believers, but with believers, woo, let's go.
Yeah.
So it's different. They just find out at different times, but it really, to me, I won't say it doesn't impact negatively when you're a non-believer, but the upside when you are, oh my gosh, it's incredible. We just have so much more in terms of our abilities. And it's a whole lot more fun for me too, because I know I'm working with a believer. And so therefore, if we're in unity with each other and with God, there's nothing we can't accomplish.
How do the people not of the same faith as you, how do they tend to receive you? Do they, once they find out, they shy away? Do they continue to engage, or how do you keep
engage? They continue to engage. So for example, one of the guys I'm coaching is an Indian, and so he's a Hindu. And I'll say, do you believe that I care about you? It's funny. I asked him, do you believe I care about you? Yes, Bob, I believe you care about me. I says, do you believe I care about you, even though you're a Hindu? Yes, I believe you care about me. I said, can you care about me and can you hear me, even if I'm not a Hindu? Yes. I said, okay, we're going to go. We're fine with that.
Good.
And so he's good with that. And I can admire some things about the guy that's independent of the fact that he's a Hindu, and he can admire some things about me that I give him, independent of the fact that I'm not a Hindu. And so he understands my faith. I understand his. I understand some elements of his faith, and he understands some elements of mine. But the basics of I care about him and I want him to be his personal professional best doesn't change. And he perceives that.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. And by the way, same for a non-believer.
Yeah. Well, we're close to the end of the show here. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the audience?
Oh my gosh, Joel, there'd be so many. But no, I guess if I had to share one thought, it's this. I am an absolute firm believer that leaders are made, not just born. And so there has not been a person I have found yet that if they're willing, they cannot be a great person of influence and run a better organization and have a better life. So I've seen the possibilities in every type of human being you can almost imagine, no matter what their backgrounds. And to me, I love that hope that while everybody's a box of chocolates, I love the fact that every one of them can have a whole lot of gems in them. And so what I get to do to bring out the best in people, I pinch myself sometimes. It's a whole lot of fun. The journey is worth the time and the effort. So
that's good.
I appreciate the time today, Joel.
Yeah, that's good. Bob, thanks for being on the show today. Maybe we'll get to have you back one of these days. Certainly, if you're ever in the San Antonio area, maybe we can have you in studio.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Fun.
Yeah. Well,
great rest of your week.
Yeah, you too. Love you, brother.
You too. Bye now.